You are not stuck. You are not forgotten. You are not delayed. You are being moved quietly, not carefully, without noise. God is repositioning you in a way that does not alert distractions, does not invite resistance, and does not require public permission. Chosen one, this silence is intentional. Heaven is working undercover in your life. There are seasons when God allows visible change arguments, endings, dramatic exits. But this season is different. This is the season where nothing explodes, yet everything shifts. You wake up in the same bed, go to the same job, talk to the same people, but internally you are no longer standing in the same place. Your spirit has moved ahead of your circumstances. You may have noticed it subtly. Conversations that once energized you now drain you. Goals that once excited you now feel too small. Environments that once felt familiar now feel restrictive. That is not ingratitude. That is growth. God is quietly lifting your internal altitude before your external life catches up. Think about your workplace. You still perform well, but you no longer compete for attention. You're less reactive. You don't feel the need to prove your worth in every discussion. You observe more. You choose your words more carefully. Others may think you've become distant, but in reality, you've become focused. God is training you to move with wisdom, not impulse. In your finances, this quiet movement looks like restraint. You don't chase quick money the way you used to. You hesitate before risky decisions that once tempted you. You're building slowly, intentionally. No one applauds discipline. No one cheers for delayed gratification. But heaven records every wise choice you make in silence. At home, the shift feels even deeper. You love your family, but you no longer absorb their anxiety as your own. You don't argue your calling anymore. You don't defend your need for rest. You don't explain why you're changing. You simply are. God has taught you that not everyone needs to understand the instructions He gave you. And this is where many chosen ones get confused. You expect God's movement to come with clarity for everyone else. But God often moves His elect without making noise because noise attracts opposition. Silence preserves momentum. There are battles you are no longer invited to fight, not because you are weak, but because you are being promoted beyond them. God does not announce every relocation. Sometimes He just loosens your grip on where you were and strengthens your desire for where He's taking you. You didn't drift away from certain people by accident. You were gently escorted out of spaces that could not sustain your next level. No fight was necessary. No explanation was required. Heaven knew that if you stayed too long, you would begin to shrink to fit rooms you were meant to outgrow. And when doubt creeps in, when you wonder if this quiet season means nothing is happening, the word anchors you. As we are reminded through the writings of Solomon in the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, verse 7. A time to be silent and a time to speak. This is not your time to announce. This is not your time to explain. This is your time to move internally, to listen carefully, to let God rearrange your foundations without interruption. Silence here is not fear. Silence is obedience. Picture a chessboard. The most powerful move is often made quietly, repositioning a piece that looks insignificant until suddenly the game changes. God is making strategic moves in your life that will only make sense later. You may feel invisible right now, but invisibility is sometimes God's cloak of protection. When you are unseen, you are uninterrupted. When you are quiet, you can hear heaven clearly. Let me ask you something directly. Are you willing to trust God even when there is no visible proof yet? Because faith in this season does not look like celebration. It looks like consistency. It looks like waking up and choosing discipline again. It looks like obedience without affirmation. It looks like believing that God is moving you even when your environment hasn't caught up. This quiet season will not last forever. Silence is temporary. Positioning is permanent. One day, people will notice that you are no longer accessible in the same way. Not because you became proud, but because God elevated your assignment. What He is doing now does not need commentary. It needs cooperation. If this message is speaking to your spirit, if you recognize yourself in this quiet transition, take a moment to like this message. Share it with someone who feels overlooked. Leave a comment as a marker of faith, and subscribe so you stay aligned with what God is unfolding. Now pause and reflect honestly. Where has God been asking you to be silent, not out of fear, but out of wisdom? At the end of this section, type 444 in the comments as a sign that you trust God's timing and you accept His quiet movement in your life. You don't need to rush this season or force clarity before it's time. God is not late, and neither are you. What feels slow is actually precise. Every quiet day is aligning you with the right place, the right people, and the right moment without struggle, without noise. Stay faithful in the unseen. Keep choosing integrity when no one is watching. Keep listening more than speaking. Soon, the silence will break not with chaos but with confirmation. And when the shift becomes visible, you'll realize God was leading you all along, gently, wisely, and perfectly. You are learning that obscurity is not punishment, it is preparation. This is the season where God does some of His deepest work while your name is rarely mentioned. Your efforts are barely noticed, and your progress feels invisible to everyone but heaven. You are not being overlooked. You are being shaped away from noise. There is a quiet strength forming in you now, one that could not survive constant attention. God is teaching you how to stand without applause, how to remain steady without reassurance, how to keep moving forward when no one claps and no one asks questions. This is not a season of reward. This is a season of reinforcement. Think about your daily routine. You wake up, handle responsibilities, solve problems, repeat the cycle. Nothing looks dramatic from the outside, but internally, you are changing how you respond. You pause before reacting. You choose peace over proving a point. You let certain comments pass without defending yourself. That restraint is not weakness, it is authority under construction. At work, this preparation can feel especially uncomfortable. You may be doing more than others while receiving less recognition. Your ideas may be used without your name attached. Someone less qualified may be promoted ahead of you. And in the past, this would have triggered frustration, insecurity, or the urge to quit. But something is different now. You still feel the sting, but you don't spiral. You don't self-destruct. You don't burn bridges. You endure. God is teaching you endurance because where He is taking you cannot be sustained by emotion alone. The next level requires spiritual stamina. In your finances, preparation looks like discipline without immediate payoff. You are saying no to things you could afford because you're thinking long-term. You're saving quietly, planning carefully, making choices today that protect tomorrow. No one praises budgeting. No one celebrates restraint. But God sees it. He is training you to handle increase without losing peace. And in your personal life, the preparation is even more intimate. You're confronting patterns you used to avoid. You're recognizing triggers. You're healing wounds you didn't cause but are responsible to address. You sit with uncomfortable truths instead of escaping them. This is not glamorous work, but it is holy work. Here is something few people tell you. God often prepares His chosen ones in isolation because crowds interrupt refinement. When too many voices surround you, it becomes harder to hear His. So He reduces the noise not to make you lonely, but to make you clear. You may feel like life has slowed down, but spiritually you are accelerating. You are learning discernment, knowing when to speak and when silence is power. You are learning patience, not passive waiting, but active trust. You are learning obedience without needing full explanations. And there will be moments in this season when doubt tries to settle in. You may ask yourself, if God is with me, why does this feel so hidden? The answer is simple but profound. Hidden does not mean inactive. The word confirms this truth. The Spirit spoke through the prophet Jeremiah, chapter 12, verse 5. If you have raced with men on foot and they have worn you out, how can you compete with horses? God is asking you a question through that scripture. If this level already exhausts you emotionally, mentally, spiritually, how will you handle the next one? So He strengthens you now, quietly, thoroughly, without shortcuts. Picture an athlete training before a major competition. The real work doesn't happen on the podium. It happens early in the morning, alone, repeating the same movements, building muscle memory, pushing limits when no one is watching. That training is not exciting, but it determines everything. This season is your training ground. You may notice that you are becoming less reactive to drama, less interested in gossip, less dependent on external validation. That's because God is rewiring your reward system. He is teaching you to draw confidence from obedience, not approval. Let me ask you something directly. If God promoted you today, would your inner life be strong enough to sustain it? This is why preparation matters. Without it, promotion becomes pressure, visibility becomes vulnerability, influence becomes exposure. God loves you too much to rush you into something that could damage you. Hope lives here too quiet. Steady hope, because every day you remain faithful in this unseen place, you are moving closer to a moment when preparation meets opportunity. And when that moment comes, it will not feel foreign. It will feel familiar because you were built for it in silence. One day, someone will look at your calm under pressure and say, "You make this look easy." They won't know the nights you endured without answers, the seasons you stayed consistent without encouragement. The work you did when quitting would have been understandable. But God knows. And because He knows, He is not finished. What feels slow is intentional. What feels hidden is protected. What feels repetitive is strengthening you for something that will require endurance, clarity, and depth. You are not wasting time. You are being prepared. Do not rush out of this season just to feel seen. What God is forming in you here will become the backbone of your future stability. Every quiet yes, every disciplined no, every unseen act of faith is adding weight to your spiritual foundation. Soon, this preparation will reveal its purpose. When pressure comes, you will not panic. When opportunity appears, you will not shrink. You will stand steady, grounded, and clear because there are boundaries in your life right now that you did not choose. Doors closed without discussion. Access removed without explanation. Options narrowed without your consent. And the instinct of the human heart is to resist what feels imposed. But chosen one, this section is about learning how to accept boundaries you did not initiate, not as punishment, but as guidance. Some limits are not setbacks, they are guardrails. You didn't choose to be excluded from certain conversations at work. You didn't ask for the budget to tighten. You didn't plan for that relationship to cool off. You didn't request the responsibility to care for others while your own energy feels low. Yet here you are, living inside parameters you never applied for. The question is not why these boundaries exist. The question is how you will move within them. God often teaches His chosen ones through constraint, not because he enjoys restriction, but because discipline clarifies direction. Unlimited options confuse immature purpose. Boundaries train focus. Let's talk practically. At work, you may feel boxed in. Your role feels smaller than your capacity. Decisions are made above you. You are told, "This is all we can do right now." Instead of fighting the box, God is asking you to master the space you've been given. Excellence inside limitation develops leadership faster than freedom without responsibility. Learn the systems, observe power dynamics, build skill quietly. Boundaries here are shaping wisdom. In finances, perhaps the boundary is obvious: you cannot spend the way you once did. Income is fixed. Obligations are heavy. You didn't choose this season of no, but instead of resenting it, God invites you to practice stewardship, not scarcity thinking. Boundaries reveal habits. They expose what you truly trust. When money is limited, clarity increases. You begin to separate wants from needs. That discernment will protect you later when increase comes. In relationships, this may hurt the most. Someone you expected to walk with you long-term now keeps distance. A family member limits emotional availability. A friend no longer calls. You didn't choose that boundary, but you must choose how you respond. Chasing access often leads to self-betrayal. God is teaching you to honor limits without internalizing rejection. Some people are not enemies. They are simply not assigned to your entire journey. And then there are internal boundaries: energy, time, capacity. You cannot do as much as you used to. Your body says no before your ambition finishes speaking. Your mind needs rest. This is not weakness. This is wisdom emerging. God is teaching you to listen to limits before burnout forces obedience. Here are practical instructions for this season. First, stop trying to negotiate boundaries God has allowed. Every time you push against them emotionally, you leak strength. Acceptance does not mean agreement, it means cooperation. Second, ask better question. Instead of "how do I escape this?" ask, "What is this teaching me?" Boundaries often train patience, humility, prioritization, and discernment, qualities that cannot be downloaded instantly. Third, simplify your life on purpose. When options are reduced, reduce expectations. Say no faster, plan less, protect margins. Boundaries become lighter when you stop overloading them. Fourth, separate identity from access. Just because you are not invited does not mean you are not valuable. Just because you are limited does not mean you are lacking. Limits are temporary. Identity is eternal. And when frustration rises, as it will anchor yourself in truth. The Apostle Paul reminds us in his letter to the Corinthians, chapter 10, verse 13. No temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, He will also provide a way out so that you can endure it. Notice the language: endure it, not escape immediately, not eliminate instantly. Endure. Boundaries are often endured before they are lifted, and endurance builds spiritual muscle you will rely on later. Here is hope you can hold on to boundaries, clarify calling. When options shrink, direction sharpens. When distractions reduce, purpose surfaces. When noise fades, instruction becomes audible. Think of a river. Without banks, water spreads thin and weak. With boundaries, it gains force and direction. Your life is the same. These limits are not drying you up, they are focusing your flow. Let me ask you directly, where are you still fighting a boundary? God is asking you to accept, because peace does not come from removing all limits. Peace comes from moving wisely within them. This is not the season to force doors. It is the season to become trustworthy with what is already in your hands. Boundaries do not mean delay forever. They mean preparation now. Before we move on, I want you to respond not for visibility but for alignment. In the comments, write "I'll adjust." This is not resignation, this is maturity. It means you choose to move with God's guidance instead of against it, trusting that these boundaries are shaping, not shrinking you. When you write "I'll adjust," you are not saying you will shrink, surrender your calling, or lower your standards. You are declaring that you are flexible in God's hands. You are choosing wisdom over resistance, alignment over anxiety, and trust over control in this specific season. "I'll adjust" means you stop fighting reality and start partnering with instruction. You accept that God may change your pace, methods, or expectations without changing your destiny. It is a conscious decision to grow within limits, believing that adjustment today becomes acceleration tomorrow. Something has been shifting beneath the surface, and now you can feel it more clearly than before. Not loud, not dramatic, but undeniable. God has been relocating you internally long before He moves anything externally. What you are experiencing now is the strange tension of standing in one place while your spirit already lives somewhere else. This is the phase where your old life still recognizes you, but it can no longer fully hold you. You notice it when familiar routines no longer fit. The schedule still works, but the meaning feels thin. You accomplish tasks, yet they don't satisfy you the way they once did. It's not that you're ungrateful, it's that your soul has been quietly upgraded. God has adjusted your inner wiring before adjusting your outer world. In everyday life, this internal relocation feels subtle but persistent. At work, you may still sit at the same desk, but your mind operates at a different altitude. You think in systems now, not just tasks. You sense consequences before decisions are made. You care less about credit and more about impact. You haven't been promoted on paper, but internally, you already moved floors. Financially, your relationship with money has shifted too. You're no longer chasing numbers just to feel secure. You think about sustainability, legacy, margin. You feel less urgency to impress and more responsibility to steward. God has relocated your values before relocating your resources. In family dynamics, this can feel especially lonely. You still love deeply, but you no longer absorb everything emotionally. You listen without carrying. You support without rescuing. You've learned that compassion does not require self-erasure. This is not distance, it's healthy placement. Here is where many people misunderstand God's process. They think change must always be visible to be real. But heaven often moves you inwardly first, so that when the outward shift comes, you don't lose yourself in it. Internal relocation protects you from being swallowed by your own breakthrough. There are things now that simply cannot pull you back the way they used to. Old temptations feel empty. Old arguments feel pointless. Old fears feel familiar but no longer authoritative. That's because you are no longer standing where you once stood. And when confusion tries to rise, when you wonder why you feel both grateful and restless at the same time, Scripture speaks with precision. As the Apostle Paul wrote in the letter to the Hebrews, chapter 11, verse 8, "By faith Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to a place that he was to receive as an inheritance. And he went out, not knowing where he was going." Notice this: Abraham moved before he had a map. He obeyed without clarity. He trusted relocation without full explanation. This is not recklessness, it is faith matured enough to move without noise. God is teaching you how to walk by inner instruction, not external validation. That is why this season feels quiet but firm. You don't need permission, you don't need consensus, you don't need everyone to understand. You just need alignment. Here is a powerful truth: internal relocation always feels lonely before it feels liberating, because you are standing between what was and what will be. Too aware to go back, not yet visible to move forward. This is sacred tension. Do not rush through it. Think of someone packing a home before a move. The house still looks normal from the outside, but inside, drawers are emptying, closets are clearing, decisions are being made quietly. To an outsider, nothing has changed, but the resident knows this place is already being released. That's you. And hope lives here, not vague hope, but grounded hope, because internal relocation means God trusts you with transition. He would not move your spirit ahead of your surroundings if He did not intend to catch your life up to it. Soon, your environment will match your internal coordinates. When that happens, people may say, "It happened so suddenly." But you will know the truth: it was prepared slowly, carefully, lovingly. If this message feels like a quiet lamp lit along your path, let it stay burning. Some people place a small stone beside the road to remember where truth met them. That gentle act is like leaving a mark of gratitude. Others take the flame and walk it forward, passing the light to someone still searching in the dark. And some choose to return to the well they drank from, not because they are asked, but because living water is rare. Every choice is voluntary. Every gesture is beautiful. This is not pressure, it is recognition. Let me ask you something before we continue. If God has already moved you internally, what are you still waiting for permission to release? Because you don't need a loud signal. You don't need a public announcement. You don't need the ground to shake. The relocation has already begun. All that remains is your willingness to keep walking softly, faithfully, until the outside finally catches up with what heaven has already done within you. You are allowed to move forward even if others still see you standing still. Internal alignment always comes before visible motion. Trust that what God has shifted inside you will soon demand a matching change outside. Until then, remain steady, attentive, and unhurried. The moment will come when your surroundings catch up with your spirit. When it does, you won't feel surprised, you'll feel confirmed. You'll recognize the place, the pace, the peace, and you'll know this quiet season was not empty. It was accurate. There is a moment in Scripture that carries a quiet kind of power, the kind that speaks directly to your daily life. Your workplace tension, your family conflicts, your unspoken resentment. It is the story of David and Saul. Not the battlefield version, not the victory songs, but the cave. But David had already been anointed. Saul had already lost God's favor. Yet Saul still held the throne, the title, the authority. David was innocent, hunted, misunderstood, forced into hiding by someone who was supposed to lead him, not destroy him. And then one day the impossible happened. Saul walked into the very cave where David was hiding. This was David's chance. Everyone around him whispered the same thing: "This is your moment. God delivered your enemy into your hands." But David did something that still confuses the natural mind. He refused to retaliate. He refused to humiliate. He refused to take revenge, even when it looked justified. And this is where the word speaks clearly into your situation. The ancient words recorded in the first book of Samuel, chapter 24, verse 6 declare, "The Lord forbid that I should do this thing to my master, the Lord's anointed, to put out my hand against him." David understood something many people misfavor: does not need revenge to prove itself. Chosen one. This section is for you if someone wronged you and got away with it. If someone blocked you, talked about you, used their position against you and still seems untouched. This is for the employee passed over, the family member blamed unfairly, the friend betrayed quietly. You had opportunities to strike back. You chose restraint, and sometimes you wonder if that made you weak. It didn't. In everyday life, this looks like refusing to expose a co-worker who undermined you even though you have evidence. It looks like not correcting the false narrative spread about you because you trust God to be your defender. It looks like staying professional when someone tries to provoke you emotionally. That is not passivity. That is power under control. David cutting Saul's robe instead of his throat was symbolic. He proved he could act but chose not to. Some of you are in that exact place. You have information. You have leverage. You have the right words to destroy someone's reputation. And God is watching what you do with that power. Here is the hard truth. Retaliation may feel satisfying, but it contaminates favor. God's promotion does not require your bitterness to fuel it. In finances, this principle applies too. Maybe someone cheated you, took credit, left you with debt or loss. You could chase revenge through obsession, anger, endless replaying of the injustice. Or you can release the outcome and redirect your energy toward rebuilding. One path drains you, the other strengthens you. David chose strength. In families, this hurts even more. Parents who favored siblings, relatives who misunderstood your intentions. You could cut them off in bitterness, or you can set boundaries without poison. David didn't deny Saul's danger. He just refused to become like him. This section is about favor that doesn't need to prove itself. God sees everything Saul does, and David doesn't need to announce it. God knows the timing. David doesn't need to force it, Stone. When you understand this, peace replaces urgency. Let me ask you directly, who are you tempted to defeat when God is asking you to outgrow them? Because here's what happens next in the story. Saul leaves the cave, and David reveals himself, not with a sword, with integrity. And Saul is shaken, convicted, not destroyed, but exposed by mercy. Sometimes restraint becomes the loudest testimony. In modern life, this looks like your calm confusing those who expected retaliation. Your silence unsettling those who wanted drama. Your steady progress irritating those who tried to stall you. You didn't fight back, but you didn't disappear either. That balance is rare, and heaven honors it. David's season of hiding did not cancel his calling. Saul's authority did not stop David's destiny, and your current injustice is not delaying what God already approved. Here is hope you can hold tightly. Favor protected by integrity lasts longer than favor seized by force. What God gives you without revenge, no one can take from you with accusation. You are not losing by waiting. You are being refined. If this message speaks to a situation where you chose restraint instead of retaliation, mark this moment. In the comments, write 121 not as superstition, but as a sign that you choose trust over revenge, timing over impulse, and integrity over temporary satisfaction. God is watching how you handle the cave. The throne will come. When you write 121, you are acknowledging a choice. One step of restraint, 2 moments of trust. One clear decision to let God handle what you could have taken into your own hands. It represents balance, standing between justice and mercy without tipping into bitterness. 121 also reflects alignment. You place God first, the situation second, and yourself last. It is a declaration that you will not rush timing, force outcomes, or contaminate favor. You choose integrity even when no one is watching and fairness feels delayed. Most importantly, 121 is a quiet release. By writing it, you hand over the weight of retaliation, the urge to explain, and the desire to be vindicated immediately. You trust that God sees the cave, the heart, and the future, and He will respond in His time. There comes a moment when obedience stops feeling inspirational and starts feeling costly. This is that moment. Not because you are doing something wrong, but because you are doing something right for too long without visible reward. This section is for the quiet fatigue you don't talk about, the kind that settles in when you've been faithful, consistent, restrained, and patient, and life still hasn't shifted the way you expected. You are not losing faith, you are learning endurance. This stage often arrives after you've already said yes many times. You've adjusted your habits, you've changed your reactions, you've walked away from retaliation, you've honored boundaries, you've stayed steady in obscurity. And now, instead of fireworks, you're met with repetition. Same responsibilities, same pressures, same unanswered questions. The temptation here is subtle to believe that obedience should always feel powerful, but sometimes obedience feels heavy. In everyday life, this shows up as doing the right thing when it no longer feels emotionally rewarding. At work, you continue to act with integrity even when shortcuts would benefit you. You keep delivering quality while others cut corners. You resist cynicism while watching less disciplined people advance faster. This is not foolishness. This is formation. Financially, endurance looks like staying disciplined even when progress is slow. You budget again, you decline again, you wait again. Not because you lack vision, but because you've learned that stability is built one uncelebrated choice at a time. God is shaping your patience to match the weight of what He plans to entrust you with. In relationships, endurance can feel isolating. You're no longer reactive, but you're also not fully understood. You don't chase validation, but you still desire connection. You love people without letting them drain you. This balance takes strength, and strength, when sustained, can feel tiring. Here is a truth you need to hear clearly. Fatigue does not mean failure. Weariness does not mean disobedience. Even Jesus withdrew to rest while remaining perfectly aligned with God's will. What you are experiencing is not spiritual decline, it is spiritual weightlifting. Muscles ache when they are being strengthened, not when they are being destroyed. This is also the season where temptation changes form. It's no longer obvious sin or loud rebellion. It's quiet compromise, lowering standards, justifying bitterness, returning to old coping mechanisms because they're familiar. God is not condemning you for feeling this tension. He is inviting you to recognize it before it shapes your choices. And when the pressure of endurance feels overwhelming, Scripture offers grounding clarity. The Apostle Paul wrote in the letter to the Hebrews, chapter 10, verse 36, "For you have need of endurance, so that when you have done the will of God, you may receive what is promised." Notice the order. Endurance comes after obedience and before fulfillment. There is often a gap between doing the will of God and receiving the promise. That gap is not empty. It is formative. God is teaching you how to remain steady without constant reassurance, how to trust without immediate evidence, how to continue without applause. These qualities are not optional at higher levels of responsibility. They are essential. Think of a bridge under construction. The structure must hold weight long before anyone is allowed to cross it. Stress tests come before celebration, and if the bridge fails under pressure, it doesn't matter how beautiful it looks. God is testing your capacity quietly, not to disqualify you, but to secure you. There is hope here, practical, grounded hope, because endurance seasons end, but what they produce remains. One day, you will notice that situations which once drained you no longer shake you. Decisions that once overwhelmed you feel manageable. You will respond with clarity where you once reacted with emotion. That is endurance bearing fruit. And when movement finally comes, when change breaks through, it will not feel chaotic. It will feel stable. You won't rush. You won't grasp. You won't panic. Because endurance has trained you to move with wisdom instead of urgency. Let me ask you something to reflect on privately if this season is building endurance in you. What kind of future would require it? Because God does not train without intention. He does not strengthen without purpose. He does not ask you to endure meaninglessly. You are closer than you think, not because circumstances have shifted, but because you have. And that is often the final requirement before change occurs. Stay steady. Stay honest. Stay faithful, not because it feels good every day, but because it is shaping a version of you that can carry what is coming without collapsing. This is not the end of the journey. This is the part where endurance quietly finishes its work. Endurance is doing today what you promised God you would do yesterday, even when emotion no longer supports the decision. It is waking up without fresh excitement, yet choosing faithfulness anyway. This kind of consistency builds a quiet confidence that no sudden success could ever replace. Over time, endurance changes your inner language. You stop asking, "How much longer?" and begin asking, "How can I remain steady?" That shift matters. It moves you from surviving the season to mastering it, from resisting pressure to standing calmly within it. And one morning, you will realize something has lifted. Not because life became easy, but because you became strong. Endurance finished its work. What once felt heavy now feels manageable. And you'll know God used this season to anchor you permanently. You have reached the part of the journey where noise is no longer necessary. Not because the world has become quiet, but because you have become anchored. What once unsettled you now passes through without shaking your center. What once demanded answers now rests in trust. This is how you know God has finished something deep inside you. This section is not about arrival as the world defines it. It is about recognition the moment you realize you are no longer chasing confirmation, no longer bracing for loss, no longer preparing for rejection. You are present. You are steady. You are rooted. There is a calm that only comes after endurance has done its work. It's not excitement. It's not adrenaline. It's assurance. You move through ordinary days with an uncommon sense of peace. You make decisions without panic. You pause before reacting. You choose wisely, even when no one is watching. In everyday life, this looks simple but profound. At work, you no longer need to dominate the room. You speak when necessary. You listen carefully. You've learned that influence grows quietly when character leads. You are not afraid of being overlooked because you trust that what is meant to find you will do so at the right moment. Financially, you stop equating worth with accumulation. You plan responsibly because you give thoughtfully. You receive without guilt. You understand that provision flows best through hands that are not clenched in fear. God has taught you how to hold resources without letting them hold you. In relationships, you are softer and stronger at the same time. You love without losing yourself. You forgive without reopening wounds. You stay open without being naive. You no longer confuse intensity with intimacy. You recognize peace as a form of connection. This is not accidental maturity. This is cultivated stability. And as you stand here, Scripture does not shout, it affirms. According to what is revealed in the book of Proverbs, chapter 4, verse 18. The path of the righteous is like the morning sun, shining ever brighter till the full light of day. Notice the image, not lightning, not explosion. Morning light, gradual, faithful, certain. You don't become bright all at once. You become brighter by continuing to walk. Your journey has been exactly that. A slow illumination. Each season clarified something. Each boundary shaped something. Each quiet obedience strengthened something. And now, you are not rushing toward the future. You are walking into it. There is tenderness here too, because you realize how much has been released. Old versions of yourself. Old fears. Old timelines. Old comparisons. You bless them and let them go. You understand now that God was not only moving you forward, He was making you safe to arrive, safe from pride, safe from fear, safe from needing approval to feel secure. And if at any moment during this message you felt a quiet warmth, like a hand resting on your back, like a breath finally settling that moment matters. Some people honor moments like that by leaving a small mark, the way travelers stack stones to remember where clarity found them. Others feel led to take that warmth and carry it forward, trusting it will meet someone else right on time. And some choose to keep returning to this place not because they are asked, but because the path feels trustworthy now. If this message felt like a clearing where your soul could finally rest, you may wish to leave a small sign that says, "I was here." Others may feel moved to carry this light to someone still walking at dusk, sharing it gently without explanation. And some will quietly decide to keep walking this path together, returning again because the voice here has become familiar and true. None of these are demands. They are voluntary gestures like setting a candle, passing a flame, or choosing to stay near the fire when night falls. This is not pressure. This is participation. Let me ask you one final question, not to challenge you, but to honor you. Who are you becoming now that you no longer need to fight to be seen? Because that version of you, the grounded one, the patient one, the rooted one, is the one God has been forming all along. You were never late. You were never forgotten. You were never standing still. You were being moved without noise, strengthened without spectacle, prepared without announcement. And now, as you continue forward, do so gently. Carry what you've learned with humility. Walk with the confidence that comes not from speed, but from alignment. The path ahead is not rushed. It is illuminated step by step, light by light. This is not the end. This is the quiet strength that remains when everything else has fallen into place. What you carry forward from here is not urgency, but discernment. You know when to move and when to wait. You no longer confuse silence with absence or delay with denial. God has trained your inner ear to recognize timing, and that awareness will guide you more reliably than emotion ever could. There will still be challenges ahead, but they will meet a different version of you, not defensive, not hurried, not fragile. You will meet them with steadiness, knowing that nothing ahead requires you to abandon what God has already built within you. So walk on without needing to announce it. Let your life speak in outcomes, not explanations. Those meant to recognize the light will see it, and you will continue quietly, faithfully rooted in what was formed when no one was watching. You don't have to decide anything right now. You don't have to label what just happened or explain it to anyone else. If something in these words settled gently in your chest, let it stay there for a moment. Sit with it. Let it breathe. Some messages are not meant to be acted on immediately, they are meant to be kept. If this journey offered you clarity, comfort, or quiet strength, you may feel moved to pass it along. The way one person shares a cup of water on a long road without asking questions. Not to convince, not to persuade, simply because it helped you breathe a little easier, and you sense it might do the same for someone else. And if it didn't all resonate, if only one line lingered, one image stayed with you. One moment felt true, then keep that. You don't need to take everything. Truth is allowed to be selective. Sometimes one sentence is enough to guide an entire season. There is no obligation here, no expectation, no requirement to respond, react, or return. Meaningful things don't need pressure to remain meaningful. They find their place naturally, like seeds that rest in the soil until the right moment arrives. You are allowed to walk away quietly. You are allowed to stay curious. You are allowed to come back later, or not at all. What matters is not what you do next, but what stays with you after the sound fades. If something touched you, honor it in your own way. If something stirred you, listen to it gently. And if nothing connected today, trust that the right words will meet you when the time is right. For now, take what fits, leave what doesn't, and continue forward unhurried, attentive, and open to what unfolds next.